She stood behind the counter like any other barista, hair tied back, apron on, and a warm smile for every customer. To most people, she was just the girl at the coffee shop, handing out lattes and scrubbing counters. A few regulars noticed how calm she stayed during the morning rush, how she managed staff effortlessly, or how she greeted each customer like she actually cared. But others, they weren't so kind. Some rolled their eyes when she asked for their names. A few whispered rude comments under their breath. Others laughed, calling her just a barista and assuming she hadn't made it far in life. But what no one knew was that this coffee shop, she didn't just work there, she owned it. Not just this one, but the whole franchise. She had started small, like everyone else, brewing espresso and cleaning tables. But behind that counter was a woman who'd built something big, quietly, without needing to prove herself. She knew that letting people underestimate her was her greatest power, because while they were busy making jokes, she was making moves. And the day everything changed, it wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it made every single person who ever mocked her fall silent. How did she go from wiping tables to running the entire business? What made her keep going when people doubted her? And what happened when the truth finally came out? This isn't just a story about coffee. It's about grit, grace, and the quiet strength of someone who knew exactly who she was, even when the world didn't. Stay with us, because what happens next will change the way you look at success and the people you pass by every day. Her name was Maya. Quiet, polite, always on time. She didn't drive a flashy car, didn't show off her phone, and never corrected anyone who assumed she was just staff. She didn't need to. The regulars saw her every morning, wiping down tables, refilling the milk station, and jumping in when the line got too long. To most, she'd blended into the background. But those who paid closer attention noticed something different. She wasn't just working hard, she was watching. She tracked which pastries sold out first. She listened to customer complaints and fixed issues before they even made it to management. She met with suppliers personally, always asking the right questions. And when a new hire messed up an order, it was Maya who calmed the situation, not with authority, but with empathy. What no one saw were the late nights spent reviewing financials, the weekends attending business seminars, the years she spent building her dream in silence or working behind that counter. She had bought her first franchise location at just 25. Now, at 31, she owned 5, each one profitable, each one run with the same care she gave that first cup of coffee every morning. But still she chose to be there, sleeves rolled up, side by side with her team. Not because she had to, but because she believed leadership wasn't about titles, it was about showing up. And that's exactly what confused people the most. Why would someone successful work like they had nothing? Why would someone wealthy hide it? The whispers grew louder. Some thought she was lying. Others tried to dig into her past. A few even attempted to push her out. But Maya had a plan, and she was ready for them, more than they could ever imagine. The tension started small. A few staff members questioned why Maya was always so involved, why she took shifts, handled complaints, or personally trained new employees when she could have easily handed it all off. Whispers began spreading behind her back. She's controlling. Probably doesn't trust anyone else. Maybe she's not the real owner after all. Some even joked that she was faking it, pretending to be someone she wasn't. Then came Eric. He was hired as an assistant manager, young, ambitious, and eager to prove himself. At first, he seemed respectful, but soon he started testing boundaries, challenging Maya in meetings, making comments in front of staff like, "If I owned this place, I'd run things differently." Maya didn't react. She never raised her voice, but she noticed. And so did her core team, the few who'd been with her from the beginning and knew the truth. Customers also started picking up on the shift. The warm atmosphere began to feel tense. Orders were wrong more often. Staff started slacking. And Eric? He was quietly rallying a few employees to his side, planting seeds of doubt. He claimed Maya was hiding things, that she wasn't qualified to lead, and that maybe someone else should be in charge. But what Eric didn't know was that Maya had been documenting everything, every late delivery, every missed shift, every conversation. She'd dealt with people like him before, the kind who mistake kindness for weakness, the kind who can't stand being led by someone who doesn't fit their image of power. And just when he thought he had the upper hand, Maya was already 3 steps ahead. But the real question wasn't what Maya would do next. It was how far Eric, and those behind him, were willing to go to tear her down. The turning point came during the quarterly staff meeting. The coffee shop was closed early for the day, and everyone was gathered, some out of loyalty, others out of curiosity. Maya stood at the front as calm as ever, clipboard in hand. But something in the room felt different, tense, off. Eric sat toward the back, arms crossed, flanked by a few team members who now viewed him as the real leader. Maya started the meeting like she always did, thanking the team, sharing performance numbers, recognizing hard work. But before she could finish, Eric interrupted. "I think we deserve to know who's really in charge here," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Because it's confusing when someone acts like the boss, but doesn't have the title to prove it." There was a long silence. A few employees shifted in their chairs. Others looked down, unsure whether to speak or stay quiet. Maya met his gaze without flinching. She could feel the room leaning in, waiting to see what would happen next. Eric didn't stop there. He pulled out a folder, printouts of messages, numbers he claimed didn't add up, anonymous complaints he said came from concerned staff. His voice grew louder, more confident, feeding off the tension. "If we're going to succeed," he said, "we need leadership that's honest, experienced, and visible." Maya didn't interrupt. She let him talk. She knew this moment was coming. What no one else knew was that the head of the franchise network, the actual regional director, was sitting in the back corner, unannounced, watching it all unfold. One wrong move, and everything Maya had worked for could crumble. But one right one, and everything was about to change. The room was silent, all eyes on her. What would she say next? Maya looked around the room, her eyes calm but steady. She could feel the weight of every stare, every unspoken thought. Before she could speak, the regional director, Mr. Lawson, stood up from the back. No one had noticed him until now. The air shifted instantly. Some employees sat up straighter. Others looked confused. Eric froze. "I've had enough," Mr. Lawson said, his voice low but firm. "But before I say anything, I'd like Maya to speak." Maya nodded slowly and stepped forward, but before she said a word, someone else stood up. Jenna, one of the longtime baristas who had worked with Maya since her first store. She held up her phone, shaking slightly. "I wasn't going to say anything," she began, "but I think everyone should know what Eric's really been up to." Murmurs filled the room. Jenna tapped a few times, then turned her phone toward the group. It was a recording, dated 2 weeks earlier. Eric's voice came through clearly, bragging about how he planned to take over the shop, how he was just waiting for Maya to slip, and how he had friends in the corporate office who owed him favors. The words were smug, sharp, and full of intent. Eric's face drained of color. But Maya still didn't raise her voice. She turned to Mr. Lawson, who gave a small nod. He had already heard the recording earlier that morning. And then, just when it seemed the story had finally reached its boiling point, another twist came. Maya took a deep breath and said, "This isn't just about one store, it's about something bigger." She paused, then added, "I've been working on a private acquisition. If things go as planned, this franchise won't be under corporate management much longer." Gasps echoed around the room. The room was still. Maya's words hung in the air, and for a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. Eric stood frozen, his eyes darting between Maya and the director. He had never expected this, never imagined that Maya, quiet, humble Maya, could be playing a game far bigger than anything he'd anticipated. Mr. Lawson didn't miss a beat. He stepped forward and addressed the room, his voice authoritative. It's true. Maya has been negotiating for the past year to buy out the entire franchise network. She doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. She's already proven it by doing what most people couldn't. Eric's face twisted in disbelief, and the murmurs in the room grew louder. Employees who doubted Maya, who had whispered behind her back, now stood wide-eyed, realizing just how wrong they had been. But there's more, Maya added, her voice steady as she faced Eric. I already have the paperwork in place. I'll be taking over corporate within the next month, and that means we'll be making some big changes around here, starting with the leadership. Eric opened his mouth to argue, but Maya raised her hand. You're not going to be part of those changes, Eric. You're fired. The room fell silent. No one had expected that final blow. Eric's face turned red with rage, but before he could say another word, Mr. Lawson stepped in. Actually, Maya's right. I've been watching closely. Eric, you've undermined the entire team, not just Maya. You're done. As Eric stormed out, Maya turned to her team, a small smile forming. I know it hasn't been easy, but now we can do things our way. And just as the room started to relax, Maya paused, eyes narrowing with a sudden realization. She glanced at the clock. It was almost closing time. But then a phone call came through. She picked it up. It's the corporate office, she said, voice flat. There's a final offer on the table. The terms, they've changed. The deal is off. A collective gasp swept through the room. All eyes were on her again, waiting for the next move. But Maya, now fully in control, didn't show fear. She simply whispered, "Time to play my last card." Maya took a deep breath, her hand still on the phone. The room was tense, everyone waiting for her next move. She glanced at the clock again. Time was running out, but she wasn't flustered. She'd been in high-pressure situations before, and she'd learned that when everything seems to fall apart, it's often when you find the true power to push forward. She ended the call with a final decision, one that surprised everyone in the room. The deal's not off, it's just changed. I'm not selling anymore. I'm taking full control, and that means the power stays with us. There was a stunned silence, then a wave of disbelief, followed by a slow build-up of applause from her team. They had all doubted her at some point, unsure of whether she was truly capable of running this entire empire. But in that moment, they knew. Maya had already played the game, quietly, strategically, and now she was winning it. Eric's downfall was swift. The corporate office had already begun severing ties with him, and the remaining employees who had sided with him were given one final chance to leave with him, or stay and help rebuild the team. The decision was clear. Days passed, and as the new owner of the franchise, Maya implemented changes that reflected the heart and soul she had always wanted for the business. The culture of the coffee shops shifted, more focused on employee well-being, customer satisfaction, and community connection. People who had been skeptical of her before now admired her ability to lead with both strength and compassion. Maya knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew she was ready. She had taken the biggest gamble of her life and won. It was her time now, not just to run the business, but to prove that success isn't about what you have on the surface. It's about who you are when no one is watching. And as the last customer walked out, Maya stood by the counter once more, just as she had all those years ago, ready for whatever came next.